Welcome back to Motor City Connected. My name's Kyle Garrison and I am your host. Today is Wednesday, July 31st. And for this episode, episode 4, I kind of just want to hop in and start talking about the Detroit Lions training camp that I was able to go to on Monday, and then touch up a little bit about the training camp I was able to go on Wednesday. So Monday was the first day of full padded practice, full contact. And Wednesday was supposed to be, but ended up just being helmets to kind of give players a little bit of a rest before next week where they head to New York. And that will be their joint practices and then their preseason game on Thursday evening in New York. So obviously when they go to those joint practices, there's a lot of contact. So I think that the coaches kind of wanted to give a little bit of a break. And the fact that John Kaminsky yesterday had a season-ending injury, 5 to 6 months, which he could play towards the end, but not great coming out of training camp, coming out of Allen Park, that John Kaminsky is going to be missing some time. So I think that the coaching staff decided to tone it back a little bit on Wednesday and focus more on some fundamental stuff and a little bit of film. So, but Monday was high intensity. Monday, the pads were cracking. It was really, really fun to watch these guys go at it. I think that the competitive nature of all these players and these coaching staff mixes really well together, and they're able to always have competitive practices but stay in as one family. The offense and the defense go at each other between the whistles. Every time that whistle blows, though, they're brothers again. So it was a really, really fun practice to be at. The intensity was really high. I know that all the guys wanted to get out there and start cracking pads. I know Dan Campbell, of all people, wants to get out there, put on the pads, and start hitting. So it was really fun to see the guys out there just getting after it. I want to hop right into it. I want to kind of go through the day on Monday, touch a little bit on Wednesday. And on Monday, Dan Campbell spoke to the media. He's always the first coach to speak to media early in the morning before practice. And I was able to be in the media room for that. And all eyes were on Campbell. This is a big year for him. This is year 4 of his coaching tenure. And he was excited. So he had some good stuff to say about Brian Branch's injury. Talked a little bit about the safety depth and where we're at there. And then also he spoke really highly of JMO. He talked a lot on his growth and just the development that he's seen from Jameson Williams in the past couple of months. The quote that he had that kind of stood out to me was, "This is the most confident I've seen him since he's been here. He's in a good place. He's taking the coaching. He's trying to work on it, and he's making plays." Obviously, this is a very plain, simple statement. Obviously, every player comes in, takes coaching, and works on it. But the fact that Dan is highlighting it and pointing it out rather than any other player is because I think Jameson Williams something's clicking. I think that there's something in his route running, there's something in his ball tracking, his footwork, that they're figuring it out behind the scenes. So I think that Dan Campbell wanted to just give everybody a heads up that this is his breakout year. This is the year that he's going to make some noise, and it all starts with the training, the coaching, and I'm just excited to see that Dan Campbell is speaking so highly of a guy that has struggled so far. He has not lived up to the expectations that I think a lot of people had for him with the number 12 pick out of Alabama, and it's year 3 now, so it's time for him to really step up, become a leader in a very, very young locker room, and I think that's what he's poised to do. That's what he's set up to do. I think the offense is going to be geared around him a lot more than it was last year, and take the load off of David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and give them a 5th option that they can consistently go to and get productivity. So excited to see that Dan Campbell had glowing things to say about Jameson Williams. I want to just run through the entire day, some people that stood out, some position groups that stood out, and one of the first people that stood out that I wanted to touch on was Khalif Raymond. So in the one-on-ones, the corners versus the wide receivers, that was one of the first drills they did right away on Monday. He had a really great catch, had a nice corner route, and I just wrote it down, but the reason I wrote it down is because I wanted to touch on a bigger idea with Khalif Raymond. With Josh Reynolds leaving last year, that number 3 receiver position is wide open, and there has been a ton of candidates to take that spot over throughout camp, Khalif Raymond being one of them. Another guy that's really stood out is Darius Fountain, who he was on the practice squad last year, didn't get really any time with the team, but he looks really, really good out of camp so far. He's very fluid with his motions. He's a little bit of a taller receiver. And he's been running with the ones a lot. Today, on Wednesday specifically, he ran with Jamison Williams and Amon-Ra St. Brown and the rest of the starting offense. So right now, I think what they're trying to do is just mix in all of their guys that potentially could fill that spot and see how they mesh with the rest of the starting group. I'll just go through some of the guys that could take that 3 spot. So Khalif Raymond kind of has that edge right now, I would say, just experience-wise, being in the system. And then I would say Darius Fountain, who has leaped Donovan Peoples-Jones, in my opinion, and then Antoine Green, who was the 7th-round pick out of North Carolina a couple years back. So you have your 4 guys that are 3 through 6 on the roster, and it's just going to be a matter of who takes that extra leap during training camp and during their preseason games, and they trust to be that number 3 guy going into week 1 against the Rams. Some other stuff I wanted to talk on. With the 1v1s, I saw, Terrion Arnold struggled against Amon-Ra St. Brown. A lot of cornerbacks do. But I did like the fact that he stayed calm, short memory as a corner, and the next rep, he had a really, really nice play on Antoine Green in the middle of the field. So just the quickness in the recovery and making sure that it didn't get to him, Amon-Ra beating him. It's nice to see from a rookie because a lot of rookie corners can come in, and if they get thrown into the fire right away, they get in their own head and they start to pile up the mistakes and compound the mistakes, and it just gets ugly. We saw it with Jeff Okudah. It's just not great to watch. But Terrion Arnold, really good bounce back practice. Started off a little rough, but throughout the day, you could just see the confidence grow with him figuring out that he's able to keep up with the speed and the pace of the NFL game. So then we'll move on to the run session. So the offense and the defense did a little skeleton run session where the offense is working on their run plays. Defense knows that they're run plays, but they're still able to clog gaps, make it uncomfortable for the offensive line, and so the offensive line can work on a defense that's keyed in onto the run game. And what I noticed was the D-line, regardless of if they knew if it was a run or not, they were filling gaps. They were scraping down the line. The technique looks a lot better. You can tell that they're all meshing a lot better together. Aiden Hutchinson was always that guy, but now he's got complementary pieces around him, and they can make some noise, and they did it all day. The defense, in my opinion, won the day on Monday. They were so physical, and it was frustrating for the offense. They could tell they were not getting the deep ball options that they used to have. It was a lot of dink and dunk passes. It was a lot of screen passes, end arounds, because you could just see the defense was moving faster. They were locked in. The first, second, and third unit, every unit that came through looked just worlds better than last year. So really exciting to see the defense play the way they did on Monday. On Wednesday, it's a little harder to see how defense actually plays because of it's less physical. You're only wearing helmets, and I get it. You want to take a break and you want to give your guys time to rest before you go to New York. But on Monday, the defense really showed out. So excited to see what they're able to do in year 4 of Aaron Glenn. What else do I have here? Yeah. Running backs couldn't do anything for the offense. It was every single running back that was getting a shot, whether it was Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, Craig Reynolds, Jamar Jefferson. Nobody could get anything going on the ground except for Jamison Williams on an end around, took it about 25 yards. That was about the biggest offensive play of the defense versus offense session. A couple other players that kind of stood out to me. Kirby Joseph looked really, really solid. He still hits really hard, and I'm excited about what he's able to do in his 3rd year now in the Aaron Glenn system. So really, really good stuff from Kirby Joseph and that safety group in general. Ife Melifonwu, Brian Branch has been banged up, so he did not fully participate in practice on Monday, but he is still dressing and playing with the team, and hopefully will be back come week 1 versus the Rams. One note I had was Hutch and Amon-Ra kind of went at it after the whistle one play, and Amon-Ra kind of gave him a shove. Hutch kind of bellied up to him, and Amon-Ra kind of turned around and walked away. I think it was a pretty good business decision not to mess with Hutch. But the reason I wrote it down is just I love the nature of these guys, even if 2 star players going after it during practice, because they care and they want to get better, and iron sharpens iron, and they know how every single person in that locker room thinks they have the chance to win the Super Bowl. They know they have a good shot, and I think that the intensity is only getting higher and higher the more confident that they get. So I love to see the fire out of two of our stud players, two top 5 players, no doubt, going at it during practice. Hendon Hooker, during the team session, struggled. He could not hit his targets. Receivers over the middle were getting balls high. He overthrew a couple of people. He overthrew Anton Green once. He overthrew a screen pass. It's just, you can just tell, I think he's still trying to figure it out. I think it's really, really fast for him. Coming off of the ACL injury, again, it's really hard for guys to come in off of an ACL injury and adjust to the speed of the game. And I think that's something that is hurting him, especially with the fact that he didn't get any real live game reps last year. So we'll see what he can do in the preseason. I'm not writing him off yet. I still think he's a really good talent. He's got a great arm. He always has since college, just a little bit on the older side, but we'll see what he can do this preseason. I hope he gets a lot of reps out there so he can kind of settle in and hopefully take over that number 2 quarterback position. So we'll move on to 7-on-7s. This 7-on-7 has always been my favorite session. In high school, I played wide receiver, played some corner, played a little bit outside linebacker, a little bit safety, a little bit everything. So I always did 7-on-7s, and they just look so fun because the DBs are so energetic and just lively now. That DB room's so much younger. It's just these guys are ready to go to war. You can tell they're young and they're spry, and it's exciting to see a group of guys kind of mesh together as well as these 4, 5, 6 corners have. If you add in the Emmanuel Mosleys of the world and the Kendall Vildors, because Terrion Arnold, Ennis Rakestraw, Amik Robertson, and Carlton Davis all on Monday impressed me a ton. Granted, I was watching them the closest, that and the D-line, because those were the holes in our team last year. So I was keeping a really, really close eye to the DBs, but they were having fun. They were flying around, It was just refreshing. So really good stuff out of on the 7-on-7s for the DBs. They held their own against a pretty potent offensive attack and some pretty good quarterback play. So I love 7-on-7s too because it gives the quarterbacks an option to actually go through their progressions, go through their reads in a kind of a live game session. And it allows the defense to get a look with 4 different routes going on. So they're, got to pay attention to different things. And it's a great thing to work on. So good stuff out of the 7-on-7s. Offense made plays, defense made plays. And that was fun to watch. A couple people that stood out in that 7-on-7 session. DPJ looked really solid. Caught some good balls. So I'm not writing off DPJ when I say that some other guys are taking over that wide receiver 3 spot. Definitely not. He still looks like a pro receiver and a guy that can make an impact on a playoff team. It's just going to be a matter of who really, really shows out during camp because, sometimes you can have a bad couple weeks and they might not be who you really are as a player, but it's just how it goes. There's only so much time in an NFL season for evaluation of players as a coach. So we'll see if Donovan Peoples-Jones can keep impressing. I think his straight line speed's kind of concerning, and just his lateral quickness. He's never a really quick, fast guy. He's just always been a big, strong body that can go over the top. So we'll see how that plays out. I think that Khalif Raymond and Darius Fountain are also looking really solid, but I just wanted to point out because DPJ is a Michigan guy. I'm a Michigan fan, so shout out to DPJ. Hopefully he gets some time on the actual roster this year, and we'll see what he can do in preseason. I think that he'll actually get some targets and be able to make some plays. So that'll be fun to watch. One big thing I had was during the live session. This is something I wanted to kind of touch on in a little bit deeper information. I just wanted to discuss it. So Amon-Ra and Jameson Williams complement each other so well. They're the thunder and lightning are David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. It's kind of how Amon-Ra and Jameson Williams are. Amon-Ra's not a big, deep threat. He's not going to go over the top and catch a 70-yard ball for 6. If he's going to get a 70-yard touchdown, which you saw it against the Vikings last year, it's going to be he catches it at the 40 and takes it 40 yards to the house. So the fact that Amon-Ra and Jameson Williams are able to line up on the same side of the field and stack is going to be absolutely crucial to this offense this year. I saw a play where Amon-Ra, he did a curl route. Kirby Joseph was the safety on top, and Jamison Williams was coming right off of the Amon-Ra curl route and taking it as a post route towards the middle of the field. And immediately Kirby Joseph's eyes go right on Amon-Ra because he gets down in his quick, his footwork's super quick. He gets down in his stance, he turns, and he's open at the curl route. The corner over top is looking at JMO, but he's also got his eyes on Amon-Ra. The linebackers are watching Sam Laporta come over the middle. They're watching the flow of the offensive line, making sure they're not pulling guards, make sure it's not a run play. And then the linebackers are focusing on the running backs out of the backfield and Sam Laporta at tight end. So when Sam Laporta comes over to the side that Amon-Ra and JMO are on, it takes the linebacker, makes the safety look at Amon-Ra, and it takes JMO over the top. And you saw it a couple times last year. This was exactly what they did. It's just JMO's snap count wasn't high enough where they could run that consistently. That set is so perfect for a Ben Johnson offense, especially with the play action threat that this team has in the time that they give Jared Goff with the offensive line. I'm so excited to see how they utilize Amon-Ra and JMO together because they're both so dynamic and they both can do so much. It's going to open up a ton in this playbook. I know I'm getting way too excited about a singular formation, but it fires me up, and I think that it's going to be a really hard thing to cover if you're Jair Alexander or you're Jalen Johnson of the Bears or you're a secondary coach of another team, because it's going to be really hard to cover the quickness of Jamison Williams, who's one of the fastest players in the league still, regardless of how many games he's played. And then Amon-Ra, one of I think the most dynamic receiver. He can play in the slot. He can play as the X. It doesn't really matter where you put him. He's going to make plays. So you got to watch out for that. And I know that obviously defensive coordinators are going to key in on that. They started to do that on JMO more this year, but the more snaps, the more comfortable JMO gets in the offense, the more dangerous that this formation becomes. So sorry for going absolutely insane on that, but I'm fired up about it, and you guys should be too. Look for it in the preseason. I'm sure they'll run it with all the receivers because it's exactly how an offense should be run if you have the players that we have. And then next thing I wanted to talk about was some of the player interviews. I kind of touched on what I liked from practice, and now I kind of want to touch on some player interviews. I'll go kind of through at the end, I'll go through who out of the 2 days I was there impressed me the most. But right now I want to talk about Frank Ragnow. So Frank Ragnow, he gets interviewed, and I don't know if anyone has actually heard Frank Ragnow talk. He is the most humble stand-up guy, biggest teammate you'll ever meet. And immediately if somebody asks him, coming into this year, you're looked at as the best center in the entire NFL. What does that mean to you? And he goes, it doesn't really mean much. This is not a direct quote, but it doesn't really mean much to me. All I care about is being the best teammate I can and making those around me better. And as a center, that's the exact mentality you have to have, because your position is so important. You have the most important job, which is getting the quarterback the ball, and then you are the centerpiece of the offense. So your blocking schemes are the most complicated because you could be going anywhere. And I think it's a really hard position, and it's a really undervalued position in the NFL. And Frank Ragnow could be like, yeah, I am the best at it. Like, totally. Like, that's a fact. But instead, he talks about just his teammates and the people that he, is spending as much time as he's with. He's smart. He's spending a lot of time with these guys. He knows these guys. They care for each other. They're brothers. And that's how Frank Ragnow treats it. And he's kind of the old guy, the old head, him and Taylor Decker in that O-line room. So it's just great to see him taking that leadership and just being the guy that we know he is. We already knew he was hilarious. We knew he was a very simple, nice guy. But the fact that he is able to just brush aside being the best center in the league and make it about everybody but himself is pretty eye-opening. So good stuff from Frank Ragnow, and I hope he plays for a long time. I know he's had some injury concerns with his toe, and that's really, really bothered him, but he's played through it because he's an absolute tank. But we gotta value him while he's still here. I think we got to appreciate what we've got while he's still here, because he's a hell of a player. JMO was the next player to talk for the player interview section. He just looks happy. He just walks up there. He's got a big smile on his face. He's saying yes, ma'am, yes, sir to people. He's just a respectful, good young guy. And he walks up there, smile on his face. And you can just tell he's the same age as me. Like it's pretty hard to interview when you got 7 cameras on you, you got 15 reporters all around you, and they want to hear what you got to say. So you gotta be analytical and you gotta not make a fool of yourself. But he just kind of goes about it nonchalant. They asked him, what's been different about this camp? Everybody's raving about you. You're the biggest story. Blah 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 blah. And it doesn't get to his head. He's a pretty humble guy, and he just says, "I feel a lot different. I can't tell you a real reason. I'm just having a lot more fun, I think." Like it's just one of those. It's just I think who like he doesn't really know. He's just having more fun, and I think that attests to the fact that he's working a lot harder. There's no more side, distractions outside of playing football. His job right now is to play football. He doesn't have to worry about serving a suspension or rehabbing his knee. He can just play ball, and I think that's why he's having so much fun. And I think that he's a player that probably has pretty high highs and pretty low lows. So it's just good to see him in a good place going into the year, and I hope that in the preseason he kind of is able to fix up on those mistakes and those ball tracking issues and bring into the season a brand new JMO. Let's get Super JMO. Let's get Super Waymo in Detroit. Let's get an 1,000-yard season out of him and take some load off of Amon-Ra's shoulders. But couple other things. He's talked about Ben Johnson. He just talked about how he loves how Ben calls the game and thinks that he's just a student of the game and knows exactly what he's doing. And I also agree with Jameson Williams on this. I think that Ben Johnson does know exactly what he's doing. And I think that's really reassuring for a young guy like JMO, who he could be apprehensive about, where do I fit in this lineup? Do I fit with this team? But instead of second guessing it, Ben Johnson is every single day reassuring him, you're going to be a focal piece of this offense. You better be ready. Let's work. And I think that's why he's developing a lot of trust in JMO, and JMO's developing a lot of trust in him. So good stuff from JMO. Terron Arnold also was talking, and I heard him talking about Jameson Williams and their relationship and how it goes back to Alabama. And Terrion Arnold's very first day of practice, he had to go up against Jameson Williams, and JMO kind of cooked him, and he let him know about it. And the reporter asked, "Does that continue now? You guys still jawing at each other?" And Terrion was like, "Yeah, but this time I'm not the little bro anymore. I can hold my own." So it's good to see those guys reconnecting and going at it on the field. They're two competitors and they're two focal points of this team going forward. So it's fun to see that they have that connection, and it's continuing to grow. Last one I wanted to talk about, player interviews on Monday, was Taylor Decker. He actually signs an extension on his original deal. It is 3 years, $60 million. So he'll be making $20 million over the next 3 years into 2027. And I think that's a great signing. I know it's not the flashy signing Matthew Judon or going out and getting a elite pass rusher, but rather re-signing the guys that you have so you can have guys under contract, and re-signing the people that have been in the system and have grown with the regime. And that's exactly what Taylor Decker is. He's been here since 2017. He was drafted by the Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia regime, stuck it out. He's one of the only people left on the roster still, and he's getting rewarded for it. You re-sign your bookend tackles. Now you have Penei Sewell under contract for another 5 years, and you have Taylor Decker under contract for another 3. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that, man. It is really hard to find 2 reliable bookend tackles in this league, and Brad Holmes went out and did it very seamlessly. Obviously, when he got here, he already had Taylor Decker, but he drafted Penei Sewell 6th overall in his first draft, and both those guys are just future Pro Bowlers for the next 5 years. Like, no big deal. They're 2 all-pro players. I know Penei Sewell is definitely all-pro. Taylor Decker might not be quite there, but still a Pro Bowler, a reliable piece in the best offensive line in the league. And I think this is just a great re-signing. During the interview, he got a little choked up. He was emotional about the fact that this is his 3rd time getting re-signed by the team he got drafted to. He's obviously doing something right. He's created a family. After his first group left in 2019, he had already been there for 3 years. Pretty much they clean house except for him. And he sticks around, becomes the vocal leader in that locker room, and is now getting re-signed for another 3 years. in the peak of where the Lions are at. They've never been this good since he's been here, and now he gets to stick around and reap what he sowed. Like, it's a great story, and I'm so just happy that Taylor Decker wants to be here. Even though he's a Buckeye, even though he's an Ohio State guy, I've grown to love him now. You got to put the college bias aside when you're rooting for your NFL team. I'm the first one that knows that. So shout out to Taylor Decker, man. So glad to have him around for another 3 years. Couldn't be more excited. So good stuff. Good stuff from Taylor and the rest of the guys that talked on Monday. And then on Wednesday, it was pretty just low key practice. It got done a little early. Give the guys some time to rest before the weekend and before going to New York, like I said. But some of the things that I wanted to touch on was Dan Campbell just talking about Levi Onwuzurike and just with glowing remarks. I did not expect that. He was talking about Levi Onwuzurike as if he was going to be a no-brainer starter week 1. And great. I love it. Like, perfect. I could not be happier that Levi Onwuzurike, after suffering a pretty horrific injury with a spine injury, coming back and looking as good as he has through camp, let's go. I'm here for it. Let's get Levi Onwuzurike opposite side of Hutch this year. Let's get him some snaps at DT. Let's utilize his versatility. And I'm so glad that Dan Campbell said something, because I would never have been able to even tell you that Levi Onwuzurike has been making a difference in training camp so far. So good to hear that from Dan Campbell. I'm super excited to see what he can do in preseason and see if that kind of trickles over into the season and he can be as good as he's been talked up to be so far. So good stuff out of Dan Campbell and Levi Onwuzurike. And then Dan Campbell continued to talk about the defense and just how it has never looked better since he's been here. And then Aiden Hutchinson said the exact same thing after practice. They both just talked about how the energy is completely different. Even though in Hard Knocks you saw how intense the practices were, now it's like those practices, the coaches were running them. But now that they've got their guys, the players know how to run them. The players know exactly the process that the front office and the coaching staff wants to have during training camp, and they follow it to a T, and they're all so diligent about it. It's like a military camp out there. Obviously, they're having a lot of fun, and they don't take it too seriously. It's very loose out there. But when it comes down to brass tacks, they're getting it done. And both Aiden Hutchinson and Dan Campbell had glowing remarks about the rest of the defense. Obviously, we know what we're going to get out of Hutch, but it's the other 10 guys that we're going to be looking for this preseason and then up into the early regular season. A couple other things I had written down about Wednesday was that the DB depth is being accentuated by the coaching staff and management. They want everybody to know this DB room's a lot different than it has been. Emmanuel Mosley last year was signed before he got injured, and he was supposed to be a potential cornerback 2. Right now, he's looking at cornerback 5, and he looks good. I'm not even hating on Emmanuel Mosley. I just think that there's some better options ahead of him. But the fact that our number 5 corner looks like he could have been our cornerback 1 last year, I mean, obviously, I don't want to look too much into it. It's training camp. We haven't even gotten into preseason yet, but it's refreshing to see that our DB room is finally intact and there's no holes like we have had in the past. So shout out to Brad Holmes for just building this team the way he has. It's just unbelievable to watch them from year to year just fill each position that they need pretty seamlessly. And pretty much through the draft, they really haven't done much in free agency or through the trade market. It's been mostly through the draft. So the draft picks are looking great, and the free agency signings were looking great in Amik Robertson, and then the trade was for Carlton Davis. He's also looked really solid. So great stuff from the DB room. We're excited to see what they're able to do, and we'll get a chance to knock down Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua and Matthew Stafford down a peg after they absolutely torched us in the wild card game. They didn't win, but their offense was on fire that game, and if they had a couple more possessions, they might have done some damage to us. So hopefully the DB room can hold their own in that game and for the rest of the season. And then last thing, JMO punt returner ? I don't know. He's been catching a lot of punts out of practice, out of training camp. I thought it was just to kind of work on his hands, but he's been catching a lot of punts. I don't know if that's the best idea, but hey, he's the fastest guy on the team. Let's do it. Let's put him out there. Let's give him a shot during preseason, and if he looks good, why not? I mean, I don't know what they're thinking for it. It could be Khalif Raymond. Who knows? It's always kind of up in the air. I feel like for the Lions, the past couple of years, it's been a different kick returner each year. So we'll see how that turns out. But would love to see JMO return some punts. That would be really, really fun. And then, yeah, to wrap it up, just the players that stood out to me the most throughout the couple days of camp. Ennis Rakestraw. I know I wasn't there on Tuesday, but Tuesday he had a pick, and on Monday I had written him down, and he continued to ball out the last 3 days. So he's my number one guy. I think that Ennis Rakestraw could sneakily become the cornerback one by the end of the season. But, I mean, who cares at this point? Cornerback 1, 2, and 3 are all equally as important. So it'll be cornerback by committee at this point, but he's going to get a lot of reps. And I'm excited to see what he's able to do. Terrion Arnold was hyped up for him after practice, after he got that interception. And just good stuff from Ennis. I know it's probably a little weird for him. He was the second pick from the team, but he was also the second corner, so they could have taken him before Terrion Arnold, but they didn't. So he doesn't take that personally. Him and Terrion are like really, really good buddies. So it's so fun to see those two guys just have a great time out there and make plays. And then, yeah, more on the DB depth, just the Carlton Davis trade was great. We did not give up much for him, and he's looked really solid as well. And then Amik Robertson also looked really good. So I literally wrote down all four of the corners, Terrion as well. They all showed out. They all looked really good. I should have just wrote down the cornerback room, but I didn't. I wrote down all four. And Amon-Ra St. Brown was another guy, obviously. It's Amon-Ra St. Brown. We expect this at this point. He's a playmaker, and he continues to show why he shouldn't have gotten passed up on as many times as he did in the 2019 draft. I mean, it's ridiculous that he was taken as low as he was, but we're glad he fell, and just shout out to Amon-Ra. Jameson Williams, I wrote down, talked enough about him. Everybody's so excited about him. I'm sure that if you're watching this, you've seen stuff on Twitter, stuff on Instagram, just glowing remarks about how he's playing so far in training camp, and really excited to see what he's able to do. I can't stress enough how pumped I am to watch Jameson Williams' breakout year. I'm calling it now, and I'm not even gonna say if he has a breakout year. I'm saying when he does. Another guy that stood out was Jamar Jefferson and Zonovan Knight. There's some backup running backs, but their physicality was definitely unnoticed. They are not unnoticed. They're both of their thighs are bigger than my waist, so I figured I'd have to point out how great our training staff is and our weight room facilities, and just the fact that all of our running backs look like they eat a full cow every single day, but they're all really good shape. It doesn't make any sense to me, but I absolutely love it. So shout out to our training staff. They've done a great job just getting our guys in shape and making sure that they stay healthy. And then, yeah, that's pretty much all I have. Aiden Hutchinson, another guy that stood out. He obviously that's granted at this point. Everybody knows that he's a playmaker, and he's going to be one of the best players on the defense every single time he steps on the field. So shout out to Aiden Hutchinson and the job that he's doing. Colby Sorsdale looked good as well. There was a couple snaps I saw him kind of manhandling some of the interior D linemen. So it was fun to see him as he's a younger guy, another depth piece that we can have for the future. But yeah, I can't touch on everybody. I would if I could, but it's all right. We're already getting over to almost 35 minutes. So I'm going to wrap this up. This has been Motor City Connected with Kyle Garrison. If you enjoy, please like and subscribe on YouTube and follow us on Spotify. Next time, I hope to do something along the lines of this, kind of covering Lions as the season gets underway, as the preseason gets underway. Maybe talk a little bit more about Tigers, but we'll see with how their season's going. It's kind of on a downward trajectory, and I don't want to be too negative about them. So let's focus on the positive. Let's focus on the Lions. This has been Motor City Connected. I'm Kyle Garrison. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate it.